When you're mastering, the most important tool you have is your ears. But sometimes your ears can use a little help. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of things that I use when I'm mastering. I mean, I use a lot of stuff when I'm mastering, obviously. EQs, compressors, limiters, saturators, clippers, all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to talk about those. I mean, I could, but there's a lot of people on the internet who have done that in much more detail and probably a lot better. However, there's a bunch of things that I don't see come up quite as often that I think are worth discussing, and I'd like to talk about those. They're mostly utilities that come in real handy when I'm doing mastering, or sometimes even mixing, and some of them are useful for metering or monitoring. The first one I'd like to talk about is HorNet VU Meter. It's basically just a VU meter and gain. What's cool about it is it will automatically detect and adjust to a specific tolerance for VU. You probably are wondering, why does this matter? Because if I'm getting everything that's, not clipping at the beginning, it should be fine, right? Well, the thing about input gains, certainly even with plugins, is that a lot of things like saturators or anything that does analog modeling is usually calibrated to a specific reference of around 0 VU. So you'll get the best performance in terms of like harmonic distortion and all that in a track that's coming in at the proper levels. And while most of them have input gains that you can adjust so you get everything right, this kind of sets it at the beginning so I don't have to fiddle around every single time. It's a cheap plugin. I think it's like $5-10. You set a reference in RMS, dB RMS for your VUs. So 0 VU is equal in this case to -18 dB RMS. Let's set it for. This allows you to have a little bit of headroom, so it's not going to slam it right up against 0 when it does some adjustment, just in case there are peaks or something like that go way over. So you set it for 3, you start playing back, and you hit auto, and it will compensate either up or down with your gain. So that way, when you're feeding it into your next plugins, everything's coming in at 0 dBu or dBVU. It's also handy if I have a whole bunch of tracks and I'm doing this. I could do it all one at a time, so then if I'm using the same chain or the same hardware, everything's at a consistent basic level, and I don't have to spend a lot of time just fiddling around with input gains to try and get everything just so. I mean, I have to do a little of that regardless, but this takes a lot of the grunt work out of it. I will demonstrate. I'm using a track called Blind by the band Unitcode Machine, courtesy of them. I'm working on this project right now. It's still in progress, but you can kind of get a feel. They're a great band. Eric Christopher's a wonderful guy. And so let's see what this thing does. So as you can see, I pressed auto and it adjusted this to -4.3 decibels. So now everything that goes into the plugins after this is coming in at that level, which is approximately 0 VU. You can change this reference. Some plugins are optimized for -12, some are for -18, some are, I think, -16. Whatever. It's close enough. For this, the stuff that it goes into next is optimized for -18, so I'm using that. So that one's handy, and like I said, it's cheap, it's fun, it's useful. Another one I use a lot is Adapter Audio, Streamliner. It's sort of it's a commercial product. It's part of the Plugin Alliance bundle. So I don't actually know how much it is for a permanent license. I get it through the subscription, but it kind of is a combination of a whole bunch of different tools that I used to use. It does loudness metering, kind of like the Ulean loudness meter, which is free. If you need a loudness meter, Ulean's is pretty damn great. I'd say go for that if you could, if you don't want to spend any money. But this will also lets you do loudness penalty matching, because if you're uploading to a streaming service, they will adjust based on loudness. They will normalize to a baseline of usually -14 LUFS, or sometimes a little different, but usually in that ballpark. So this will let you monitor your track with those adjustments so you can hear how it sounds. And it will also let you preview different codecs. So like if I wanted to hear what this is going to sound like on YouTube at low quality or Spotify at mobile quality, I could. That's particularly handy since everything is digital these days. You're going to kind of want to know what's going to degrade the worst. So if you're playing it back and you realize, oh, these hi-hats sound absolutely terrible. Well, there's something you can do about that. You can take steps. So it's really helpful for platform translation. So I can demonstrate what this does. Same track. So that's YouTube at low quality. So that kind of gives you the idea there. It gives you a loudness graph. It's coming in at sort of a fairly competitive loudness. Target is -14 because I have Spotify selected. So that means there'd be a penalty of negative, my eyes are terrible, 3.9 decibels for normalization. It's not terrible, and it still sounded pretty good when I did the match and previewed it there. Sometimes if you have high normalization corrections in one direction or the other, your track can sound kind of weird, so it's good to see that. Things like dynamic range and loudness are probably best computed over the whole track, not just over a snippet, but, for the purposes of demonstration here, you kind of get the idea. So that is Streamliner. And the last one I use is by Meter Plugs, and it's called Perception AB. You launch... put something at the beginning of your chain, you specify it as a pre, so it's the very first thing on your chain. And then you have a second one at the end of your chain. And you hit the sync button while it's playing. And it'll compute your latencies here. So, and then you hit match level usually while it's playing. I'll talk about this so you can actually hear me talk and not just hear Unitcode machine. But the deal is, there's a weird little psychoacoustic trick that your brain plays on you. When you hear something that's louder, you tend to immediately qualitatively think it's better, which might not be the case. So this lets you match the levels and listen to sort of the before and after with your plugins on and off without having to manually adjust. So you can just quickly A and B and figure out if you're actually improving things, or hear what your changes are without your brain kind of saying, oh, well, it always sounds better because it's louder. So this is extremely useful because, kind of gets you out of your head a little bit, to listen to the track and hear if the changes you're making are actual improvements or not. So yeah, I'll demonstrate here. So that's before.
It starts again. This noise inside my head, but I can't pretend that it won't consume me. And when it amplifies, it steals the light. There's no way out now. My sight is gone and I'm all alone, and there's no strength to go on. And I was blind.
So yeah, you can definitely hear there's a difference between the beginning and the end. But now if I were to just do that without matching levels, it would definitely have a very different... I wonder if I can do it in the plugin. So that's before, and yeah, so you can hear there's a big difference in loudness, about 4 or 5 decibels, and your brain's immediately going to say, oh, well, that louder one is better, but it might not be. So this allows you to kind of loudness match things and keep your brain from playing tricks on you when you're listening to things. And there are all sorts of very cool features to this. You can specify whether this is at the beginning of a channel or at the end of a master bus. So you have all these, I think you can have 128 different instances of it. You can specify whether it's matching a pre, post, or reference. I just have it post because that was the default in this case. But this is a very useful plugin to have. It's also a commercial product. Meter Plugs makes good stuff. They also make a loudness penalty plugin that will do a bit of what Streamliner does. They have some other stuff that's very useful for monitoring dynamic range. It's Ian Shepard's company, and he's the guy who's kind of led the charge against the loudness wars in the past decade or so. And yeah, so it's good stuff, and it's ridiculously useful in the mastering process. So there you go. HorNet, Perception, Streamliner, useful utilities. There's some other stuff I use for metering and monitoring, but I come back to those a lot. The YouTube algorithm knows all, sees all, and controls our lives. So in the spirit of that, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more studio videos and music videos. Also, feel free to check out Null Device, Klack, or Edgecase Development Corporation on Bandcamp or your favorite streaming site. Thank you.